Hi, I'm Cornflower, and I'm a full-time cancer researcher and software engineer, and I love playing video games in my spare time, especially Pokemon. Pokemon is absolutely one of my favorite franchises ever, from the anime and the trading card game, the video games, and basically any merchandise I can get my hands on. I adore Pokemon. And this year, the Pokemon Company launched Pokemon Legends Arceus on January 28th, which just so happens to be my birthday. So, thank you very much, Pokemon, for the wonderful gift. One of the things that I love about Pokemon Legends Arceus is that it truly delivers a novel Pokemon game experience and makes you feel like a proper researcher when you are completing your Pokedex. The Pokedex is filled with research tasks for each Pokemon in the Hisui region, and as an avid Pokemon fan and completionist, I took it upon myself to not only complete the Pokedex, but to perfect the Pokedex. So, in this video, I will be sharing what I believe are the worst Pokedex entries to perfect in Pokemon Legends Arceus and why. Before we dive into this though, I want to quickly share the key differences between completing Pokedex entries and perfecting Pokedex entries. As I mentioned, the Pokedex is filled with research tasks for each Pokemon, and completing these research tasks awards you points for that entry. An entry is considered complete after fulfilling 10 points worth of research tasks for that Pokemon. Some research tasks are also worth more points than others, so completing Pokedex entries can actually be done quite quickly and easily. Similarly, a Pokedex entry is considered perfect once every single research task has been completed for a Pokemon. As you might imagine, perfecting entries can be just a little more time consuming than simply completing entries. So, does perfecting entries, as opposed to completing entries, in your Pokedex give you anything other than personal satisfaction? The answer is not at all. Not even a little recognition from your peers or superiors. At least when you complete your Pokedex, you receive the shiny charm, but if you've already collected that, then no one cares a flying hoot that your Pokedex has been perfected. The only difference between a complete entry and a perfect entry is the appearance of the Pokeball icon next to the image of the Pokemon. The icon for completed entries shows a standard red and white Pokeball, whereas perfected entries have sparkles, a flair that clearly sets them apart from their standard Pokeball cousins, who are less glorious and not nearly as beautiful as they are. For better or for worse, however, I did in fact perfect all 242 entries in my Pokedex. I used agile and strong style moves 40 to 70 times for multiple Pokemon. I fed Snorlax a bajillion berries. I caught a bunch of Eevee, Kricketot, and Baneri without being spotted. I even saw Magikarp use the move Splash 100 times. And let me tell you, as tedious as some of these entries and research tasks may seem, none of these actually made me want to bang my head against a wall. Anyway, with my perfected Pokedex as evidence, I therefore feel extremely qualified and maybe a little compelled to share with you now what I believe are the worst Pokedex entries to perfect, starting with number 7, Barboach. So catching Barboach, or really any Pokemon that lives in the water without being spotted, is super annoying. I swear these guys can spot you from a mile away. And while Barboach was not the only Pokemon with this type of research task, the amount of Barboach you had to catch without being spotted is 20, which I felt was a little excessive, especially since other Pokemon that live in the water with this same research task only require catching 10 without being spotted. Throughout the course of perfecting Barboach's entry, however, I did manage to encounter and catch 3 shiny Barboach, so perfecting its entry was not without its rewards. Number 6, Avalog. Avalog made my list due to personal reasons, and here is why. During my quest to perfect its entry, there were basically no Avalog to be found. I spent hours resetting the Alabaster Icelands to help get them to spawn, and it sort of helped. However, most of the time I would only find and encounter 1 Avalog between resets. There was one run where I encountered like 4 Avalog, but sadly that never happened again. Naturally though, once Avalog's Pokedex entry was perfected, there seemed to be Avalog aplenty, including alphas, which would have made the research task for catching heavy specimens so much easier. Overall, the research tasks themselves were really not so bad, but since my luck was just that awful, Avalog had to make the list. Number 5. Magnemite, or as some people endearingly call it, Magnemite. To start, Magnemite only spawn during Spacetime Distortions in the Cobalt Coastlands. In addition to catching 10 of them, you must catch at least 8 light specimens and defeat 15 Magnemite total, with at least 10 being defeated with ground-type moves. Assuming that the first 10 Magnemite you ever catch does happen to include those 8 required light specimens, that brings us to 25 Magnemite minimum that you will need to encounter. Magnemite will pretty much always spawn during Spacetime Distortions in the Cobalt Coastlands, but there were times when I didn't have any spawn at all, and other times when I would see 3 or 4 during a single Spacetime Distortion. Even under the best circumstances, say 4 Magnemite per Spacetime Distortion, we are looking at 7 Spacetime Distortions minimum, and the rate at which these appear varies greatly. I had Spacetime Distortions appear within 15 minutes of my arrival to a region and upwards of 30 minutes after my arrival. So 7 Spacetime Distortions multiplied by both of these waiting times gives us a range of 1 hour and 45 minutes minimum to 3 hours and 30 minutes to complete these specific research tasks for Magnemite. I had trouble finding a reliable article that details how often Spacetime Distortions appear. Some articles I found stated that players can increase the chance of one appearing if they stay in one place in a region, whereas other articles claim that as long as you are in the overworld, then it doesn't really matter. Number 4. Gallade. Gallade makes the list because of its spawn location in the Alabaster Icelands. An Alpha Gallade is guaranteed to spawn in the Ice Point Temple. However, getting to the Ice Point Temple is, in my opinion, a trek, and I'm a little lazy. The closest location you can fast travel to on the map is the Ice Peak Camp, and from there you must fly, climb, or ride your way up to the Snow Point Temple. Once you finally arrive at the temple, you must navigate your way to the Alpha Gallade, which is much closer to the exit of the temple than it is to the entrance. If it was a little closer to the entrance, then maybe I wouldn't feel as strongly about this. One of the research tasks for Gallade is to defeat it with ghost-type moves. So imagine making this trek and then realizing once you reach the Alpha Gallade that you didn't have a Pokemon that knew any ghost-type moves to defeat it with. Yeah, definitely not speaking from personal experience. Number 3. Granitos. Granitos is another Pokemon that only spawns during Spacetime Distortions, specifically in the Coronet Highlands. Shielden spawn under the same conditions, but for some reason, Granitos would spawn way more consistently for me than Shielden, which made Granitos' Pokedex entry slightly less annoying to perfect. Similarly, I encountered Granitos' evolution, Rampardos, multiple times during these Spacetime Distortions, whereas I never saw any of Shielden's evolution, Bastiodon, spawn during these events. Regardless of their spawn frequency, or lack thereof, neither Rampardos or Bastiodon made this list since their entries are actually quite easy to complete once you've caught and evolved enough Granitos and Shielden. Number 2. Shielden. As we just mentioned, Shielden only spawn during Spacetime Distortions in the Coronet Highlands. To make matters more difficult, you must catch 10 Shielden, with at least 5 being heavy specimens. This wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for the fact that the Shielden that I encountered were extremely shy. Shielden? More like Shielden. Get it? Shielden, because they were shy. I tried a few things that I hoped would increase their spawn rate, but none of these efforts really seemed to make an impact at all, including catching and or defeating anything that spawned, and getting Pokemon to despawn so that I could get another group of Pokemon to spawn in their place. Please feel free to share any methods that you tried that you actually felt helped the spawn rate of your Pokemon of interest. And finally, that brings us to the absolute worst Pokedex entry to perfect. Number 1, Nosepass. The research task for Nosepass that really gave me a lot of trouble was witnessing it leap out of shaking ore deposits. Nosepass spawn in a couple areas in the Coronet Highlands, making them really easy to encounter and catch in the overworld. However, I only ever got it to consistently leap out of one specific ore deposit in these areas. Fortunately, that ore deposit is visible from where you spawn at the summit camp in the Coronet Highlands, so eventually I would just reset the area if I didn't immediately see the ore deposit shaking from where I was standing. Nosepass isn't the only Pokemon with this research task, but you do have to witness this event 15 times, which makes it more tedious to complete than even witnessing Magikarp use Splash 100 times. Bonsly, for example, also had this research task. Similarly to Nosepass, I was only able to get Bonsly to consistently leap out of one specific ore deposit, but you only have to witness this event 5 times instead of 15, as it was for Nosepass. That is all I have for you today. Please let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with any of these choices. Feel free to share your own list of the worst Pokedex entries to perfect as well. I'm also really curious to learn if you had your own version of Avalog. You know, a Pokemon that you felt definitely went out of their way to avoid encountering you while you were trying to perfect their Pokedex entry. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. A link to my Twitch channel and other socials are also available below in the description. Thank you again for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day that is as perfect as my Pokedex in Pokemon Legends Arceus.